games, board games. We might be talking about the value of board games, but we're not gonna shout. Here I am with someone I don't know very well. Their name is Mondo. Hello,
Oh
and
wow,
we are going to
nice.
talk about this and that. Ultimately, we'll have a chat. We'll talk about how things came to be. And along the way, some board games you will see. Hello, and yeah. So
My
thank you,
favorite intro
Mondo,
ever.
for joining me. It's an absolute delight. I had you on because I got to know you, I think, through Vertessa, through Mansplaining, and
Yeah,
not really chatted much. I think I might have seen some of your tweets or vice versa. But it
sure,
was
yeah.
really when I reached out and I was like, hey, would you come on? And then he said, hey, here's my email. And then I was chatting before the thing, like, I was super disorganized, but like, hey, it's all cool. I'll come on tomorrow. Let's chat. And so I was like, hey, this is a kind of bonus Busy Beats and Board Game Bladder. It's not like a 10 a.m. show, but we're kind of extending it, having a wee bit of an extra celebration. And this is to celebrate, this morning was my 800th episode. So thank you very much
Yeah,
for that.
congrats. Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's a big milestone. It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of speaks to how many days it's been since the pandemic started, pretty much, because I started very soon after the pandemic, and yeah, it was, what am I doing? Having something as a routine to do and speaking to cool people around the world, which you couldn't do, like, just if everyone had to come to my house. That's one of the most amazing things about this. But
Yeah.
enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about you. What would you like people to know about yourself? I mean, you've not been designing super long. You've just been in doing this for a few years. Well, you've already had an amount of success that I'm super envious about. I'm not going to lie. So congratulations with that. So
Thank you.
after started off in 2016, after 3 years, you came the first runner-up in a contest, and that led to you getting a signing, and then from then you got to like five more in the past 3 years. And yes, you're a family person, like you love planting fig trees apparently. What else would you like
Mhm.
people to know about you?
I
Sorry, not
mean,
planting
that's
fig trees, tending after the fig tree, sorry.
yes. No, that's a pretty decent kind of intro. Yeah, I'm a designer. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. As you said, been designing for about 6 years and have this 6 games under contract. So I'm also on TikTok. I was one of the first board game design focused content accounts on TikTok. So I've been able to kind of see a cool community there grow. So it's funny because I'm a board game designer and I have these games that are due to be published, but none of them have actually been published yet. Like we're still kind of waiting for
Mm-mm-mm.
everything. Some of them are getting pretty close, but so folks that have heard of me have usually heard of me because of TikTok and not because of my actual games or design portfolio. But yeah, that's those the highlights, the interesting points. I imagine
And you've got a
interesting points.
ridiculous number of followers. I don't have, no, I could double check, but how many do you know how many followers it is that you've got offhand?
Yeah, it's over 30,000 at this point. But TikTok followers, it's the platform's a little different. So 30,000 followers on TikTok is not the same as 30,000 followers on Twitter or subscribers on YouTube or something like that. Like the algorithm set up a little bit to kind of proliferate follower counts more than other platforms. But yeah, it's been a fun couple, well, I guess year and a half now since I started. To kind of seeing that grow and fostering that. But yeah, TikTok's a fun platform. I enjoy being on there a lot.
I'd like to ask you about that because I've like signed up as in to register the name, if you know what I mean. So if you see stuff by Bez there, that will be me. But if you see stuff by Bez and Dave puts up a video, then that's definitely not me because I've basically not been active at all. And
Yeah.
so, um, what do you enjoy about TikTok? Does it make you feel, when you talk about proliferating followers, does it feel more like a community compared to Twitter or YouTube or Facebook?
Um, so the content that I've done on other platforms, I feel like there's just like different sort of feelings and vibes about like the way people interact on different platforms. I've found TikTok to be very positive and very encouraging. Everybody on there is like just generally friendly, and there's not a lot of like drama, and there's not a lot of people posting trying to expose things or start fights or whatever. I don't know, like there's just a really kind of positive, friendly vibe, which I've really enjoyed. Like I feel like the people that I interact with on TikTok, even that I haven't met in person, like I feel like we're friends, and I feel there's kind of this camaraderie that has developed just because of all this sort of like positive interaction around board games. So I've enjoyed that, and I don't know, I think that like with other platforms, there might be a tendency to post about more than just board games, but board game TikTok is like, that's pretty much all we talk about. So a lot of the differences that we might have, this aren't part of the conversation, which in some ways is really great. It's really refreshing, because I think that it's hard to find that in relationships in this day and age. So I appreciate that, even if I disagree with somebody about something that has nothing to do with board games, we just, we don't have that conversation on TikTok. So it feels good to get on there, and it feels good to interact with people, because we're sharing in a common interest, and, generating these shared experiences around something we love. So
it's
I enjoy that,
interesting because the way that algorithms and rules and moderation can lead to very different experiences across different platforms. I think there's a strong parallel between that and game design. And someone was recently talking about Twitter, which is obviously being bought by someone who's now saying, hey, I want it to be true freedom of speech, and you can say anything. And if that actually goes ahead, lots of people think, hey, wait a minute, true freedom of speech means that basically the jerks are going to take over. You can't really have that. I mean, moderation is the thing that makes a platform non-toxic. And so is it that the algorithms are just showing you more of what you want, the board game stuff, or would you say that it's because of people behaving in a different way because of the moderation, or what do you think is going on there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know too much about like how it all works, but I feel like the incentivizing that goes on through the algorithm is like drives people to make a certain type of content. Like I know what TikTok wants me to make videos about, because TikTok shows those types of videos to more people, So I think that if you're on there creating, you kind of follow the carrot in that regard, where the algorithm is rewarding you for making content that is, I mean, in the board game space, educational about board games, or, highlighting specific types of games or whatever. Like, it's very game focused. And anytime you make a video outside of that, like that isn't that content, you just don't get a response, and you don't get engagement because of the way the algorithm's set up. So the incentive's there, like I could go on and talk about my personal life, or like talk about my kids, or talk about other things that aren't board games. But anytime that I've dipped my toe into that kind of space, it like the videos are just kind of flop. Nobody sees them, and it's essentially a waste of my time if my goal is to generate interesting and engaging content that people want to see. So
it's interesting,
I
because
think that there's something there.
Completely the opposite to the way I've seen it in other platforms, like on Facebook,
for sure,
or Instagram, or Twitter. Frankly, if I post a selfie, or like, hey, sometimes even something that's about general life, hey, this is a meal I made, that can get so many more likes than, hey, this is a whole bunch of art that I spent all day working on, and please look at this, and I really want you to see this. But then that doesn't get shown at all.
I think there's something to that.
I'm not gonna lie.
Right. Of course. This is totally speculation on my part, but I think that the niche economy of TikTok is like a really important part of the algorithm. So like again, this is all speculation, but I feel like like participating and contributing to whatever the niche is what the algorithm rewards. So on other platforms, it might be like general things that a lot of people are going to see and have a reaction to or feel something about. That's what's going to get, views. Whereas, yeah, TikTok, it's like if I'm making content that is contributing to this very specific thing that people are getting on TikTok to see, like that's what people that are into board games are getting on TikTok for. That's what's rewarded. So it kind of drives that. It drives like let's make like educational and interesting things about this very one specific thing, and that's what we're gonna get rewarded for. And it's funny to talk about because it's very like Orwellian, like this is a machine that's like dictating the actions that we do and the decisions that we make.
I also wonder if that means that ultimately it's less about the people, because it's less about, hey, I'm interested in you, because I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's quite nice when it's like, okay, yeah, that is something from my personal life and people relate to it or whatever. But and obviously on Facebook, I've got 1,000 people that I consider Facebook friends. And it doesn't mean that every one of them I would let sleep in my bed, if they chapped on the door right now. But, for sure, a good number of them would, absolutely. And, when you say something about, hey, I'm just feeling down, that feels like a really appropriate thing for Facebook. And it feels like you are able to make that sort of real connection. Whereas TikTok, it's kind of saying, hey, make new videos that anyone can relate to and anyone sees it. And sure, it's cool that you made it, but do you actually then have a personal brand? Is it then about you? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think that is a very valid critique, because I think it's true. I think that like the personality of like being a TikTok personality, I think is a lot less common or easy to achieve or something like because of that, because it's more about the content that you're making and less about like you as a person. So I think that that's where having a like kind of a small niche community on TikTok helps with that, because like I'm able to connect with people who I see their content all the time and they see my content all the time, and we comment on each other's stuff and that sort of thing. So like kind of like a wider general audience thing. Like there's 30,000 people follow me, but 30,000 people don't like know who I am or care about the stuff.
And when you actually make that comment, that means a lot more than just the quick like, right?
Right. Yeah. Because it's a personal interaction, and it opens doors to those relationships and personal interaction. But like you're saying, I'm not friends with 30,000 people on TikTok. I'm not even friends with the 1,000 whatever people that I follow, but I am friends with 20, 30 people that because of the way that we've interacted with each other, we've kind of been able to build that. So I think that's a very valid critique of TikTok. And I personally, like, I enjoy that about it because, I want my content, I want the things that I make and put on the internet to be a segment of my life, and not, I don't want it to creep into, my real world relationships and my family and things like that. Like, I just want it to kind of be this hobby on the side. And I'm able to do that because I'm not a TikTok personality. Like I'm not sharing all about everything in my life. I'm just sharing about
once you share too much, if you feel, I think I'm really happy that I've got a space where I can share, but it's when you feel compelled that you have to share. Like,
totally.
Sometimes, especially, my Kickstarter backers are like brilliant. They are, I hate the terms like the best because it sounds like everyone else is second best. Well, like, I'm just saying they are brilliant. And, I've got one stupidly overdue Kickstarter because it was, funded in very late March 2020 when the world basically had just started changing massively. And then, personal, like, I'm not going to lie, there was definitely bits of depression, but also Brexit, and also the fact that COVID meant that certain things couldn't pan out. That was all got in the way. But whilst I do have some people say, hey, are you still doing this, and checking up on me, no one's been saying, hey, why are you doing this other thing and you're not doing that? Like, I've seen some Kickstarters where it almost feels like people feel like they're demanding information about everything that someone's doing with their time. Like, I think this might be wrong, but I think George R.R. Martin, they painted their house And someone's like, that's ridiculous. George R. R. Martin should have paid someone else to paint their house and then spent more time on writing the next book. And it's like,
right.
like
That's
maybe they wanted to paint their house. Maybe, they don't have to spend every waking moment writing this book for you. They're not a bleeping robot. Do you know what I mean?
right. Well, yeah, and people feel like they have a right to your time if you're making yourself available in certain contexts. So yeah, it's hard to balance that. So that's something I like about TikTok is like people on TikTok don't know much about me outside of the fact that I love board games and I make board game, I design board games and that sort of thing. And that's what I want. That's how I want that to remain as long as I can maintain that. So
that's fair.
Just because there's boundaries.
I'd like to get a little bit more personal, but obviously, feel free to share as much or as little as you would like. So let's get into recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So in the past couple of days, what have you been up to? What's a typical day in your life like?
Yeah, well, we had a baby in May. So she is 5 months old now, and that's most of my time. I'm a part-time. I mean, I'm an amateur designer. I'm a full-time teacher, so I teach English as a second language at a high school here in Atlanta. And I have been able to take parental leave for because my daughter was born in May, so I've actually had the last 2 weeks off of work. So I've been at home exclusively just helping out my partner with the baby. So it's been an eventful, but not exciting few days and weeks. But a week ago, we just got back from a big road trip. We went to a couple national parks. Well, we went to Stonemeyer Games Design Day in St. Louis. And then on the way back to Atlanta, we stopped at 2 national parks, one in Kentucky and one in Tennessee, which, are pretty relatively close to us here in Georgia. So that was really cool to take my family to those places and see some of the cool sites here in the American geographic area. So been fun. Been a fun couple weeks.
That does sound super lovely. And when you say you're teaching English as a second language, I mean, can you go a bit more into what a typical day would be like when you return to work? What does that involve? Can you walk us through a wee bit?
Yeah, of course. So I teach intensive English, so it's for high school students that are learning English for the first time, which is a lot of fun. We kind of have a program, an insulated program where students are basically with me almost the entire day, just learning English. So we get to know each other really well. Like we interact so much. I mean, I see them as much as I see my daughter some weeks, which I don't love that. But so the day starts at 8 a.m. and then we have class and do class stuff. I mean, I don't know, like English lessons and activities and play some games here and there. And then I send them home and get to come home myself and be with my family. So I don't know. I mean, there's plenty more detail I could give you, but I don't know if it's interesting. I mean,
English. I do wonder how much the process of teaching crosses over with the process of designing games, because certainly in games, it's all about what level of information are people to absorb, what level of new information are people able to absorb in an easy way that still allows them to maintain this joy in the thing that they're able to go on to do. And would you say that teaching has definitely made you a better designer?
Oh, absolutely. And vice versa. I mean, I think that the process of designing a game is almost identical to the process of designing a lesson or an exercise to practice a language concept, because it's all about giving, especially with learning a foreign language or a second language. It's all about finding opportunities to practice things. So like if I'm teaching, how to conjugate verbs in the past tense or something like that, like my students aren't going to learn unless they have a meaningful experience where they do it and where they do it a lot. So I'm designing an experience around, making statements about the past or whatever it is. in a way that, again, high schoolers are going to enjoy and actually going to have fun doing. So it is game design, really. It's the same process without without the playtesting, I guess. But yeah, it's
But then
definitely
I
like,
guess there's playtesting in that each subsequent class you might use some of the same activities and
yeah,
it will be a
yeah.
little bit better and you can ask other teachers for what they did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And like that also, yeah. So being able to kind of interpret students' reactions and engagements, like if they don't connect with something that we're doing, or it doesn't, it doesn't fit. Like as a game designer, I know that means that something that I have done needs to change. I need to fix that. I need to develop something or make something, so that it sticks a little bit more. So yeah, it's funny how similar board game design and teaching are in, in those
I mean,
regards.
both of them really play into the human psychology and checking body language, which is what allows you to really gain a lot of value from real world playtesting. Because
Yeah.
you can't always rely on people to give you the full story if you just wait until at the end and ask them, hey, how did that make you feel? But by
Yeah.
looking, hopefully, I mean, I think it's important to corroborate, to double check, and to ask them extra questions during the process. But, you've got to be in a position where you're able to pick up on these signals if you're watching a bunch of people play, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the outcomes, I think, are good too. Cause like, if not just the experience that they're having while they're doing it, but is it achieving the whatever the goal is? Like, are they acquiring the thing that we're trying to learn, So it's like, it's an active process of like analyzing the experience for them and the results of it. I mean, it is game design. Like it's the same thing.
100%.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what would you say is a brilliant thing? Brilliant thing? What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Well, this is brilliant. This is a little self-promotional, but this is Colorfield is the game that I am the game that I signed with 25th Century Games. It should be hitting crowdfunding soon, but the artwork itself is what I am very, very excited about. So this is my wife, who is a professional watercolor artist, illustrated this game. So we were able to work on it together. Basically, you're making a painting and you're trying to connect the sides of the colors to score points. I won't go into too much detail, but the artwork is something that I'm so excited to be out into the world. I'm having trouble because this is like mirrored, so I'm trying to figure out what to turn and everything. But there we go. So this artwork is brilliant. I am very excited that this gets to be on the final product and that Chad, my publisher, licensed the artwork with the game. So,
and you know what? I didn't realize that art was done by your partner. So,
yeah,
I mean, is that also a brilliant thing, being able to work with your partner?
it really is. Yeah. First of all, I mean, she's tremendously talented. So that's great. Like, it's great having such a great artist on the project. But she's not much of a board gamer, and so like to be able to connect on something that we both love, kind of that are two sides of the same thing, was really great. Like, it was a really great experience to have conversations and to play the game with her and like see the work that she did on it. So there you go.
No, thank you for sharing that. And how did that come about? Was it just a natural thing? Hey, you paint stuff. I need paint for this game. This game is about color stuff. So, and is that likely to continue for future games?
Yes and no. So I had the game sort of designed, and I had the mechanics of the game designed and was looking for a theme to use because I started with mechanics on this one and decided to make it about creating paintings because I wanted to work with her on something, and we'd kind of talked about the possibility of that beforehand. So I brought her the game and was like, "Can you make art for this?" And so that's sort of where it started. And we have actually collaborated on one other project. well, a couple, but one that is most likely going to be signed soon. I've got a publisher that is in the process of coming up with a contract. But so my wife is Cuban American, so her family immigrated from Cuba in the 50s and 60s, and she grew up in Miami. So I made a game about visiting Cuba as like a tourist, and she was able to work with me on that too, to like come up with illustrations for the game. And then the publisher that's looking at it, if it all, if everything goes through, which it's not finalized yet, but we'll be using her artwork as well. So that's nice. The second kind of time that's happening. So, but it's really fun to be able to work with her on that. So we enjoy that for sure.
And I'm slightly curious with other games, have they gotten to the point where the art has been finalized and you've gone through that process where it's at the pre-production stage now?
Yeah, I have. So Color Field is finished. We have the pre-production copy that I'm supposed to look at this week, and then Mansplaining as well is I think in manufacturing or close to it. So that's done. You can see it mirrored here, but that's the box up there. So we got artwork for that one, and then another game that I made called Into the Woods, which is signed with Gold Seal Games. They have started the process of artwork on that one. So those are the three.
And how would you compare the process of, I mean, did you get to contact the illustrator at all for those games? I mean, did you feel like there was any connection? How would you compare that to working with your wife for Colorfield?
Yeah, well, I mean, the other games, I was kind of consulted on like proofs and concepts and stuff, like they would send like Mansplaining. They every time Breaking Games got artwork for it, they showed it to Tessa and I and me, and we were able to say like, yeah, this is good, this is not good, let's work on this or whatever. But it wasn't like we weren't involved in the process of creating it, so it was very much kind of they just showed us what was final or near final, and we gave the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And with the other one, Into the Woods, it's kind of similar. That's pretty early on, but I was just sent a early proof. And
which process do you prefer?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously I love working with my wife on it. But if it wasn't her, I feel like, I mean, I'm a game designer, so I enjoy the process of creating games. Creating artwork is not something that I get super excited about, because
so you don't want to necessarily have to do all that art direction, and
right.
You'd rather, I mean, you still get the opportunity to have your say, but that's maybe the perfect level for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I'm signing games with publishers, and I trust the publishers that I sign games with, or I won't sign games with them, to have a better understanding and idea of what is marketable and what is attractive to consumers. You kind of got to think in those terms when you're licensing games. So I prefer to have someone that is an expert on that stuff do that stuff, versus me like getting in and like having all these opinions about stuff that, if I'm honest, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. I can react to things based on what I feel or what I like, but I'd rather have someone, that does it professionally to do it. So that's where that's where I fall on that for sure.
No, let me quickly ask you, because obviously you've had the Ludology podcast where you talked about promoting yourself, and we've talked a wee bit about doing that on TikTok, but ultimately that's kind of, I read through your slides, I loved what you had up there about making friends within the industry and trying to get published. Now, you've had massive success getting published. Would you say that that's to do with promoting yourself, or would you say there's something else at play? I mean, obviously there's a lot to do with the quality of the games, presumably.
I mean, yeah, I think that my mindset going into game design, first of all, is that I want to get games published. You know, that is a goal. So I design games that with that in mind, like how do I make this game attractive to a market? So I think that that's helped me because I've been able to
And who do
just, I don't
you
know, like,
define as your market? Do you have a particular publisher in mind?
sometimes, I mean, there's, you know, I'm kind of, I make a certain type of game. Like I make games that are kind of that gateway level, the low barrier of entry, but complex enough for people like you and I that like games. So when I'm making a game, that's kind of my goal, is like making sure that I'm not making something that's so complex or complicated or nuanced or unique that, you know, a wider group of gamers isn't going to be able to connect to it. And for that, I usually kind of stack it up against things that, you know, reference points. I mean, games like Sagrada and Azul and that type of game, like I want to make sure as I'm making games that the people that like enjoy those games would enjoy the games that I'm working on. That's my general goal. I mean, it doesn't always pan out that way, and it's different from game to game, but yeah, that's
So you
sort of my
feel
guiding
that as your
light.
kind of upper ceiling of complexity?
Well, yeah, I mean that's sort of what I shoot for. Like I want my mother to be able to play it. That's kind of my goal, because she is enjoys games, but is not like a modern hobby board gamer. So I want it to be complex. She's just like, if it's too hard for her, then it's probably too hard for my audience. I think that's what I try to shoot for.
It's good to have
Yeah.
someone real life that you can aim for that. I mean,
Yeah.
when I look at my parents, I mean, the resistance is way too complicated for them. So they're
Yeah.
probably, you know, not able to play like something by Helvetic that would be considered super simple even. But
Yeah.
yeah, like when you say that you make games with the idea of them being published, but I'd like to drill down a little bit into that because I
Mhm.
mean that's what a good chunk of designers are doing, and most
Mhm.
designers might go, you know, far longer than you and still not, you know, many might struggle to get their first contracts or their second contract, let alone going on to their seventh contract in 6 years, which is phenomenal. And congratulations again. And I understand
Thanks.
that
Thanks.
it's not like you can say, oh, do this and you'll meet the same success. But
Mhm.
what are some of the tips that you would give to someone? What are some of the tips that you would give to me to maybe have some of the success that you've had in actually getting stuff signed up?
Yeah, I think that the strongest thing I've had going for me is just being engaged in a designer community. My first contract was with 25th Century Games. Chad Elkins runs that, and through him and getting to know him, I met other publishers, and then I met other designers through whom I met other publishers, and it like has kind of, you know, snowballed. And I think that like really seeing board game design as a collective community process is something that I recommend and encourage people to do, because it seems like it's a thing where you just sit in your room and you make your game and you work on it and, you know, do all this stuff by yourself. But if you're not playtesting the game, if you're not getting it in front of people, getting people's opinions on it, then the game isn't going to progress as well as it should. And getting it in front of people is a process of, you know, building relationships and engaging. Like if I'm sitting down with somebody over a game, we're becoming friends. You know, it's just how that tends to go. I mean, not always, but so I think that has served me more than anything, is just seeing the whole process and the whole industry as a community, and as people that as people as individuals who, you know, I can get to know and I can invest in, and it's also like really rewarding to do that. You know, I don't tend to, this industry is unique from other media industries. Like, you know, books or video games or film or things like that, because there's not a lot of money to be made. Like even the most successful board game designers aren't making a ton of money. I mean, I'm not talking about Hasbro and Mattel. I'm talking, you know what I mean?
Well, like you can't.
Nobody's getting.
People are making millions off board games.
So
some people.
Yeah, but it's not the thing that it's not common, and it's not something that everybody's aspiring to. People that are making board games are not trying to make millions of dollars. Maybe they are, and maybe that's a goal, but I don't think that it happens a lot, and I don't think it's really realistic for that to be a goal. Like,
but I think when you talk about people are not making lots of money, yeah, sure. People who are financial investors are talking on a different order of magnitude, but there are lots of people who are making a livable income off board games.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, and livable income versus the millions of dollars that you can make off of getting a book that's really successful or something. Like the ceiling for the amount of money you can make as a creator.
I'm not sure that. I mean, I would be interested to see statistics on that, because on the books, sure, there are more book publishers generally, so there's going to be more people who do make the big bucks from a book, but is it really more likely with books, or is it really more likely with films? It might be, but I just want to challenge that if it's just an assumption.
Yeah. When I don't have statistics, and it is just an assumption, so absolutely challenge it. But I think that the heart of making board games, for me and for the designers that I've interacted with and talked through this about, is driven by a passion for board games. That's on the designer side and the publisher side.
I agree with that. I 100% agree. But the thing is, when everyone says, oh, there's no other industry where people are so tight and so welcoming, I mean, I got a chance to do burlesque a while ago, and I was chatting to someone, and we met up, and I said, oh, I'd really like to try this sometime. I really want to give it a go. And then, they got in touch with me. They gave me a whole bunch of links and said, oh, yeah, this is some stuff. And then when they were organizing something, they said, hey, I'm going to do something. Would you like to have a go? And so they were basically taking a chance on me, who'd never done this before. I worked out the costume. I spent quite a while preparing it and listened to some podcasts. And it does seem to me that that community, I could definitely see parallels of a bunch of people. No one's, making big bucks off it. And it's about the love of the craft. And so I'm sorry if I'm coming across as argumentative, and I hope you don't think that I'm just being
no, you're fine.
But it's like, for all the people who say board games are brilliant, yes, they are. For all the people who say board games are unlike any other medium, I think that might just be because this is what we are exposed to. If we were exposed more to other creative fields, I'm not sure that we would be so confident in that. But of course, that would take many lifetimes of experience to properly have a say on. Sorry, that whole tangent.
I completely agree with you, and I don't think that board games are unique in that at all. I think that absolutely, every industry, every medium, there's community, and there's passion, and there's people that connect, and it's same with board games. Like I'm totally with you on that.
But in the same way that there's people who have basically made enough money to not worry about money anymore, but are going to continue making board games because that's what they love. There's many other people doing the same in films, where they're like, I love doing this. This is what I'm doing, and I'm going to continue working on it. And the numbers might be skewed because, yes, the personality on the screen does drive a lot. And so it's like, when you've got a musician whose face is right there, yes, I understand that's kind of becomes different compared to a book where your name or your face is kind of a bit in the background, if you get what I mean. So, like, in theory, unless it's that specific series, you could ask someone else to do the thing. Whereas for sure, that if you have got like the most successful TV series ever, then all the cast is going to ask for more money because they want a decent chunk of, because they are indispensable to the show's success, of course. But
Mm.
yeah, for a board game, no matter how good a developer you might be, or no matter how good a designer you might be, are you ever going to become indispensable in the same way? Probably not. And so it feels a lot
Right.
more like when Garfield talks about, yes, of course, Richard Garfield can get all the meetings, but it still comes down to the individual games.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an
Yeah,
interesting
and
thing to ponder.
for sure, yeah. And what I mean to say is, by that is that passion for board games is what drives the industry.
100%.
Right. More because there's not a realistic possibility of becoming rich off of board games. Like it happens, there are individuals out there where that's true. But like as a designer, realistically, like I look at the margins on the stuff that I make. If Mansplaining sells 1 million copies, like I'm not a millionaire, and like 1 million copies of a board game is nearly impossible. So I think that's one thing that I love about the industry is that people like you and I who are passionate about it are doing it because we're passionate about it. And yeah, maybe we have a goal of making a living off of it. Maybe we have a goal of someday having enough income off of royalties to like not have to have a second job. Absolutely. But the goals of the people involved are, because they're have to be realistic. Like I'm doing this because I love it. I'm doing this because I want to do it. And everybody that I interact with and every publisher, every small publisher that I work with is doing it because they love it. And again, like maybe they get to a point where they don't have to have a second job. Maybe they get to a point where they can hire more people or have less work or whatever. But like we're doing it because we love it. So I think that's a
Do you think
good
the industry would
motivator
be
for that.
worse if there were more people becoming millionaires off of hobby board games?
Honestly, I do. I do. I think that my love of the industry and of the hobby centers around that like we're all on the same page here of like, we love board games. We love making board games. We love playing board games. We love developing board games. If it became about, I want to make a lot of money off of this because that's a realistic possibility, suddenly my relationships with people, like I have to question, like, are you working with me because, not you, but I have
Yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah.
second guess
Hypothetical.
people's,
Is this person
right.
working with me? I get it.
Yeah. Is your motivation all the money that is to be made, or is it because you want to work with me, or because you love my stuff, or because you love games in general, or whatever? So I think absolutely, like if board games ever get to a point where there's as much money in board games as there are in book publishing or in music or something like that, it would be a very different experience, and it'd be one that I, standing here from this perspective right now, I would not be as excited about.
Wow. No, that's totally fair, and I can totally see that. Let's
Which
get to
it's sorry, but it's kind of that's not a great position for me to be in, because like I want to make a living off of board games. I want there to be enough money where I don't have to have a second job. But I realize, like, if that becomes a reality, then yeah, it will be a very, very different experience. I would rather have a career and do board games on the side and enjoy it the way I get to enjoy it right now, than have it be this big, successful, lucrative industry. So yeah.
like when you talk about sitting down with people and making friends and that being your way in, it sounds like a lot of that is down to being in St. Louis and having a lot of publishers and people around you. Would you say that's a fair assertion?
Yeah, I mean, I've benefited from, so I live in Atlanta, and two of my publishers who have signed 3 of my games are in Atlanta. So that has, that's part of it, is that has been part of my story, is having access to people locally. So yeah, that's true. Which obviously isn't true for everybody, but go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to like, yeah, acknowledge that slight privilege. And again, I'm privileged in that I'm living in London, which is the super populous city where I
Mhm.
am able to have a playtest fairly regularly, like once a week. There will be, I mean, a couple of days ago, there were what, like 12 of us, and that's for a daytime event from like 10 o'clock until 5 p.m. And that's basically every
Mhm.
week. And I
Mhm.
said to a couple of people, oh, how do you feel about maybe adding on a couple of hours at the end to play some published games where we aren't playtesting stuff just to, just go
Mhm.
through some published games and it might be nice. And a couple of people, yeah, that sounds good. So, I mean, I'm in this amazing city where when I came from Glasgow, which is on up in Scotland, the first things I looked for three things when I came down there. One of them was board games. And then coming from Glasgow, where I struggled to get like a third thing going each week, like because there was one
Yeah.
thing where we played Euro games at someone's house. There was one thing which was in a community center where there was a lots of role playing and miniatures games, which aren't my favorite, but I'll go there and play. And I was trying to get
Mhm.
like a third thing set up like once a month, and that was such a struggle. And then coming to London, where there was a game night every single night of the week through London on board.
Yeah.
Now that's still kind of building up, but it speaks to how amazing it is living in this highly densely populated city, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Well,
I
and
don't know
that's
what the
and I think
situation
that
is
that's where
like in
I'm sorry.
Atlanta. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, yeah. And I think that Atlanta is a very like there's not a lot of board game stuff in Atlanta, but I've been able to find it. And I think that that's where that networking piece comes in, because even in smaller board game cities, Atlanta is obviously a big city, but it's not, you know, it's not like Salt Lake City or Seattle or St. Louis or some of these cities that are like, have these really big flourishing board game communities. So I think that that's where the networking comes in, and being present and engaging, particularly online, really helps you connect with the people that you need to connect with. And the online piece is really important too, because, there's, like you're saying, there's many people that live in towns where there just isn't that kind of access and there isn't that kind of community, but the community is online, and you can build those relationships and you can engage and interact with people, just through commenting, following, Facebook pages or Twitter accounts or TikTok accounts or whatever. I mean, I know that my TikTok account, is grown into something, but when I started out, there was a lot of interactions and connections I made with publishers through TikTok, because again, on TikTok, it's a relatively small niche. So if a publisher's on there, they don't have 20,000 people interacting with them or trying to contact them. They have 500, 1,000 people. So like I can message a publisher and be like, hey, I've seen your stuff, you've seen my stuff. I got a game I want to pitch. Like, you want to, can we set up a meeting or whatever? And it's just a lot more accessible. So I think that if you don't have a physical access to board game community, the online piece is the way to go. I mean, it's there and it's available.
That's a really interesting way to put it. And obviously, anyone has, well, I'm not going to say anyone because you've got to be mindful of all sorts of different people. Maybe you
Of
don't
course.
have these video editing skills, or maybe don't have that personality, but you have to, if you're out there, kind of work out what works for you, I guess is the key thing. It's not so much
Sure.
about necessarily replicating someone's success exactly, but working out maybe for myself, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, congratulations, Mondo. Like, how can I take some of those lessons and apply it to my own life? Because we can always keep improving, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But
Um,
Adam in Wales, oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to mention that like the design piece is pretty critical too. Like I have a lot of games, which is also a point of privilege because I have summers off and I can spend a lot of time designing, that many people can't. So having a portfolio that I've built up over years and years and years of, 6 years of designing, also benefits access to publishers, because publishers have different needs and have different expectations. And if I have 4 or 5 games to show them, it's more likely that one of those is going to be something that they connect to and they're interested in. So,
And with these
I
4
think,
or 5 games, you're not just doing similar games, like they won't all be card games, they'll be very diverse styles of things. Is that your general approach?
yeah, that is a good general approach. My current, like, because I just had a baby, most of the games that I'm pitching now are kind of similar, which I think is something that's hurting me. But I recommend and I encourage people to try and diversify their design approach, and try to make a dice game, and try to make a card game, try to make a tile game or whatever. For
Yeah,
that reason.
100%. Because one of the lessons I got from Spiel was, I need to make more different types of games, because 2 of the publishers that I showed stuff to were like, hey, all of these are great. And I showed them like 7 different games, and they're like, these are great, but we want something that we can sell for £25. And that's nothing to do to say that my games are bad. It's just that it's not the best fit for them. So I need to be thinking, okay, what games can I work on that would fit a higher price point? And when someone else is saying, oh, these games are great, but we're looking for something like, I need to, as myself, I'm aware that I need to start working on more things that are maybe a little bit more strategic, a little bit more tactical, maybe a little bit more thoughtful, maybe even go into something that's an abstract strategy game potentially, maybe even explore something that's got like some giant components maybe made out of cardboard. I don't know how it will fold, but something big where it's this big table presence, because all of these things will help you with different publishers. Different publishers, as you say, are looking for different things. And this is something where when I'm fixated on what can I get out in the small print run, I think that's what's hurting me right now, because I'm then fixating on stuff that I can actually do as a small card game, which might not be what everyone wants, of course.
Yeah, right. Well, it's hard, like you can't necessarily force like sitting down to make a strategic war game or something. It's a hard place to start for me, at least as a designer, of like, I want to make a certain type of game. Because there's just so many directions you can go, and you kind of need a certain degree of inspiration, and that you just can't force it. So it's good advice, but it's also like make the games that you want to
Do
make
it as much as you can. It's kind of like going to the gym every day is probably good, but who really has the time?
Yeah, right.
And to the people who have the time, like, congratulations, genuinely. Like, I admire you.
Absolutely.
And I know that I
sure.
don't have the discipline to do that every day, but I'm going to try and be better at improving my health. I just want to pick up on a couple. Go ahead.
Just on that point, I see it as a great design exercise too, to try to make different games, because I think always trying to improve as a designer is really important. And if I've never had a successful dice game, like, I want to be good at that. So I want to, kind of grind away at it. Maybe make something that isn't publishable, but make something that's going to teach me and help me learn how to do that. So I think that like diversification of your portfolio is great on a lot of levels, even if it's hard. It doesn't always work out, but I think it's a good thing to aspire to.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of, myself, I know it's sometimes easy to kind of have this comfort zone where you're, hey, I'm good at this, I want to keep doing this, I want to keep improving, but that's not necessarily the best way to grow. I want to pick up and say, yes, doing stuff online, like Adam in Wales, Adam Porter did a lot of videos, and that I know for a fact a lot of publishers got to know Adam through that, because it's like, hey, here's someone making really nice videos about how to make stuff. Clearly they know what they're talking about. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was, so you talked about approaching someone on TikTok if they're a publisher and are also on TikTok. So would you recommend that sort of, if you kind of following each other or whatever, would you recommend that sort of backdoor approach rather than necessarily going through the contact form and whatever?
I mean, absolutely, with a caveat. I think that it's easy to forget that publishers are people. And most hobby board game publishers are small publishers, and it's one person or two people or three people, kind of that sort of thing. So there are publishers that don't want that, because they, especially if they're high profile, big successful publishers, like they don't want a bunch of, people like us kind of trying to get in the back door. So I think you have to be mindful of that and know what the publisher is trying to do and who they are. But I do think that being having an interpersonal, relational approach to that is really important. Again, because they're people, and because they, if somebody is running a board game publishing company, it's a fair bet that they enjoy interacting with people, that there's some social ability or some interest in like building relationships with people in the design community. So I highly recommend that approach, because I mean, it's worked for me. It's gotten me meetings. It's gotten me contracts, of just like, hey, we're doing this thing. I'm doing this thing. I'd love to show you what I'm doing. And not making it like this big, complicated, official, intimidating thing, because it shouldn't be, and most publishers don't see it that way. So I think as designers, it's good to learn that and to adapt that approach, for sure.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and thank you for sharing that. I think that maybe I'm a little bit overly wary of, reaching out through non-official channels, and it's like, yeah, sometimes someone said, oh, if you've got someone's email, if you don't, well, even if you send something through to the contacts form, like email them and say, hey, I did this, just to let them know. And then it's like, okay, cool, so you sent me that, but it's through the proper channels, and fair enough. Like sometimes it might be a case of, well, that channel doesn't quite fit, and no, I think that I need to get better at. Just again, it's a case of doing something through a non-standard format is uncomfortable, but again, your caveat is super important. Like, you have to be mindful of other people and don't be a jerk about it, but it is possible to go too far the other way. And like, yeah, that's like always the question. Like, to someone, I asked, well, how do you decide how many of your previous Kickstarters do you update people on? Like, if you've run 13, 14 Kickstarters, like, how many of those people do you tell, hey, I've got this new Kickstarter coming out? I mean, obviously 0 is too few. You want to do at least one of them. You want to tell maybe the people on the latest one, but do you do 2 of them? Like, obviously, like, all of them is too many. But yeah, and that's a question for everyone. But I think that for me, I think 2 is probably what I should like start doing right at the start of the campaign, and maybe a 3rd later on. I'm not sure about that. 3 for me feels like maybe it's too much. Other people might choose a different number, but it's deciding for yourself what's comfortable for you, I guess. But also making sure that even when you reach out, I mean, yeah, you want to add value, but it can't be the case that every single update, every single post by you is the best thing ever. You can't be like, crafting things and putting all your energy into every single thing you do. We are all human, and we've all got limits, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I think like identifying goals and understanding, what you want out of whatever the interaction is, and then drawing lines around that, is helpful. And that's, again, it's going to be different for every interaction you have, really. But and I mean, something like that, it's like if people are sick of your updates, they'll just unsubscribe, and that's that. But the ones that want to know and are interested and are going to actually go out and check things out, like, they'll stick around. So I don't do Kickstarter or mailing lists. So I don't necessarily have any experience in that, but
Yeah, sorry, I was kind of going off on a wild tangent, as that's something that I do now. We've been talking for about an hour, which is how long I like these things to normally last. But I think that what you just said about being mindful of what are your goals and what are your own limits, what are other people's limits, because you can be friendly and still kind of be clear about have barriers, if you know what I mean. You can't let people walk all over you. And at the same time, even if you want to say, okay, I'm going to be really active in this group, you can't then say, well, I'm going to reply to every single post. That's just totally unsustainable. So maybe you say, well, I'll spend 1 hour on this day or however long you've got, and I will spend that time giving back. Because like in your talks you talked about giving back, but it's also about how much time and energy you've got, right?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think knowing what your boundaries are and what your limits are,
That's the word, boundaries. Thank you.
yeah, and honoring those and sticking to those is better for everybody, right? Like if you go and do more than you're capable of or more than you can handle, then everybody loses out in the end. So I think that's an important first step. Is it's like my TikTok. It's like I know what I want out of TikTok, and what I want out of TikTok is to foster a design community on TikTok, and to generate a presence that's going to help me make and sell games that I'm making, get games published, right? So like anything outside of that, like knowing what I want out of it helps me establish what my boundaries are with it, and then it makes it really easy to stick to those, because it's like I'm not gonna share all these life updates or talk about my family excessively or whatever, because it's not.
Presumably there's a lot more boundaries that you have in terms of how much time you're going to spend making a video, because like it's not like some TikTok videos have like a ridiculous amount of editing that goes into them.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
like not just about how much time you'll do in each video, but also how frequently you'll update and how much time you'll spend commenting on other people. So how did you decide those objectives for yourself? I'm very curious about it as a case study.
Yeah.
Or those boundaries, sorry.
I think that it took a lot of time. Like when I started, I was if you go don't do it. But if you were to go back and look at my first videos, they're very cringy. But it took a while for me to figure out, like, I don't have to have high production value and a lot of effort and time into the content, the genre of content that I'm trying to make. Like I'm not making complicated presentation explainer videos of board games or something where I need like really nice lighting and I need like the right setting and I need to spend a bunch of time editing. And so once I sort of figured that out, it helped me sort of settle into the genre, like the type of video that I wanted to make. And then it's a matter of, I just want to be consistent, because consistency is really important. So I can make a video every couple days that doesn't take me much time, and that meets the kind of goals and needs that I need. And every now and then I'll put a little extra time into something, or I'll do a series about some games.
Can I
or something.
ask for specifics? Like, so we're talking every 2 or 3 days, you'll do a video, and how long will you normally spend on one of these?
I mean, generally an hour. It takes an hour to make a video. On the longer end, a lot of times my favorite videos to make are the easiest ones, which is like I'll see something online and want to make a comment about it, so I'll just like record myself talking about it and that'll take 10 minutes to like just get all the clips kind of lined up and add images or whatever. But I hardly ever spend more than an hour on a video, and when I do, you can tell that like I put more time into it. And that's the other thing, is I haven't had like, I mean, it's kind of what you were talking about earlier. Like I haven't had more success for games that I spend a lot of time on. So that has incentivized me to not spend a lot of time on too many videos, because I realize like what people are interested in from me can be done in this like kind of short, informal, quick format. So yeah,
But
every couple of days.
That's still a big chunk more time than some people might realize for a 1-minute video. And certainly it's, there's presumably a lot of thinking that goes into this. And part of me does wonder if there could be a market for like just literally 1 minute talking at the screen, just a live thing with, hey, here are some, let's talk about worker placement and what this means, and here's some games, blah, blah, blah. Or, going through
that's
things.
there's a lot of that on TikTok. There is a market for that, and it is TikTok. A lot of folks do stuff like that, and some of it does really well. So, yeah.
But yeah, at this point, I think I want to wrap up. But firstly, questionably quick questions is the next section. It's not an interrogation. It's just a questionably quick question section. Books or podcasts?
Say it again.
Books or podcasts?
You cut out. Something or podcasts.
Or podcasts.
Books or podcasts. I'll say books. I like those are pretty close, but books.
What was the last one you read?
I read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin from the Broken Earth series. Just wrapped it up.
Who would you recommend it to?
Anybody that's a fan of science fiction, kind of dystopian disaster literature.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
Favorite color of meeple?
Blue.
Okay. Would you rather have a duck-sized meeple or a meeple-sized duck?
A meeple-sized duck. You run out of space really quickly as a board gamer, so meeple-sized duck. That'd be fun.
Okay, and what was the last game you played?
Let's see. Last game I played was actually Magic the Gathering. I played Magic the Gathering a couple nights ago.
Which colors do you play?
I usually play blue if I get a choice. I tend to let other people choose first, but.
And who would you recommend start playing Magic the Gathering?
Oh gosh. I might lose you some love on this, but I'm not the biggest fan of Magic the Gathering. I've played it twice.
Are you saying you would recommend it to no one?
I would recommend it to someone that
not
hasn't
that you would
played
recommend
a lot
people
of...
against it, but it sounds like you're not going to actually go out to recommend it to anyone.
See, Magic is one of those things that you can't talk bad about, or you get.
I mean,
roasted.
it is a deep rabbit hole, and it can be super expensive. Is one of the problems.
Yeah, and I would say I would recommend it to people that already love Magic, because that's who it's for. And I don't know. That's a tough one. I wasn't ready for that question.
That's totally fair. Well, as always, it has been an absolute delight. Thank you for joining me, Mondo. And now it's your turn. I've asked you lots of questions. Now it's your turn to ask me the question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. What's your question for me?
All right. So you're from Glasgow and you live in London.
Yeah.
What is something that you prefer about London, and what is something that you prefer about Glasgow?
I like deep fried haggis. I like haggis, and I like the fact that there are proper ceilidhs in Glasgow. I mean, that's good fun. I like deep fried haggis. I like the chippies. They're better in Glasgow. Also, it's a lot cheaper. Honestly, the thing I like about London is the population density. That's it. It's like whatever you want to do, you'll probably be able to find people to do it with. And if you're willing to cycle, 40 minutes to an hour, you can get, somewhere where good things are happening, whether you want to go clubbing or do weird experimental stuff. It is, though, a lot more expensive than Glasgow. Glasgow, whether it's like the accommodation, the going out in a pub, where like in Glasgow, it might be £3 for a pint. And then in London, it might be a £5 or even £7 in some places in London. And so, that's basically my comparison of those two.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I have been to London, but I have never been to Scotland, so I'll have to...
If you ever make it up to Glasgow, I would recommend going on a Monday night to the pub known as Nice and Sleazy's on Sauchiehall Street. It's the best open mic night I've ever been to. Hopefully it's still running. It's run by an excellent musician, Jerry Lyons, who would play the guitar and sing some songs, and then as other musicians come along, then once there's a critical mass, once it's gone like maybe 7:30, Jerry will invite people one at a time up onto the stage. But the rule is one person gets one song. That's it. You get up, you do your best song. And that means that musicians are doing their best song. It also means if you don't like someone, then you don't have to listen to them for very long. It also means, as a musician, it's very low barrier. Like, you know that you'll get a turn, but you only have to practice this one song. So you can practice this one song over and be a lot more comfortable with it. That's where I would say I cut my teeth as a musician, as a pianist. And because it's all made up of musicians, if you want people to sing along to you or anything, that's a place to be. Nice and Sleazy's, I absolutely recommend it. Monday night, Sucky Street,
Nice
Glasgow.
and Sleazy's on Monday night. All right. Whenever I get there, I will check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Awesome. And at this point, I want to wrap up and say over to you. What are you up to? You can share what's on you if you want to. Once this stream finishes, what are you up to the rest of the day? I am going to write up some information for 2 games that need to be done within 3 weeks. They're going to be in my hands and on sale within 3 weeks, which I'm quite excited about. So I've got to kind of finalize some bits of writing for that. And I might also do bits of writing for the game after that. And also some Kickstarter thing, because I've got a Kickstarter currently running. But what are you up to, Mondo?
Well, for the rest of the day, I have a meeting with the publisher to proof our color field pre-production copy. So
awesome.
Very excited about that. And then probably yard work, although I think it's raining. So I was supposed to do yard work today, but might not happen.
That is fair.
We have a very exciting life.
I will say that I will probably try to get out before the sun totally goes down, because I just realized that because the clocks have sadly changed, which I'm not a fan of, it's going to get dark quite soon. And so, I'm going to make sure that I get to the park and see the ducks before I do any more writing. But yes, we've talked about so much. It's been an absolute delight. We've talked about what you've been up to, having like 6 games, maybe a 7th on the way, with them finalizing the contract. It's been 6 years. Congratulations. Like 30-odd thousand people following you on TikTok. The difference between that positive, encouraging nature of TikTok, where it's based purely about the board games and maybe the niche economy that's going on, compared to other social medias. We talked about making sure that things fit in with your time and the information that you're willing to give. Like, you don't want to give too much personal information all the time. We talked about having a 4-month-old and teaching English as a second language, and how you need to do it to learn. Like when you are teaching particular grammar structures, or you could draw parallels with part of a game where it's, if there's a rule that's barely used, well, maybe that rule shouldn't be in the game, because if people don't do it, they forget about it. Working with your wife, I mean, not that I have one, but like, it sounds like a lovely thing to do. And working with people that you know and love. And working with other publishers sounds like something that you're more into, if it wasn't your wife, of course. Being engaged in the design committee, and how passion drives the industry, and how money can potentially corrupt. We talked about being in Atlanta and finding publishers local to you, and me with the population density, and making different stuff, like maybe having a dice game. I mean, I've not done a big dice game. That would be cool. Maybe I should try it. So I've had a go of it, but it didn't really click together. I should give it another go. But that's always the way, isn't it? We talked about trying to find the online presence, Adam in Wales, sometimes approaching people via social networking. We talked about what matters, thinking about what your boundaries are, what your limits are, how much time you're willing to give something when you're making a TikTok. Like, don't be spending hours and hours unless you think that that will actually improve the end result. It's like kind of a case of what thing can you do that actually matters to the people at the end, because maybe spending 1/10 of the time on this one thing doesn't really matter that much, but it might be that doing a little bit more time on something else actually matters a lot more. I don't know. You need to work out what actually matters. That's some of the skill of crafting anything, whether it's TikToks or games. We talk about books, about the 5th seasons for lovers of sci-fi, about Loving Blue, whether it's in Magic or with the Meeple color, but then at the same time not necessarily recommending it. We talked about having a meeting for Colorfield, and it's been an absolute delight. And I hope that we get to chat again. When I get to my 1000th episode, it will be in the middle of the week, unfortunately, but I am tempted to, maybe be like, okay, this is 1000, and then I'll pause for like a day and then like do a giant 1001st episode, because that way people can actually come on. Because I don't think most people would be able to come on midweek, because most people do actually have a full-time job and everything. Right. But it would be lovely to chat again at some point in the future, and it's been an absolute delight. If people want to check me out, they already know where I am, and stuffbabes.com/streams will tell them about my future streams. But if people want to know you, Mondo, where would you like to be found?
Yes, TikTok. I'm most interesting on TikTok, but the handle is @GamesByMondo. Find me on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube at the same handle. And then my website is mondodavis.com. So updates about games that I'm, coming up are there. You can also follow my publishers. 25th Century Games and Breaking Games are the two that are publishing the closest games. So if you're interested in those games, you can find those at their website. Again, that's 25th Century Games.
For Colorfield coming out from 25th Century and Mansplaining coming out from Breaking Games.
Correct. Yeah. So they'll be posting updates as they come out. But both of those there should be something that people can find online within the next 2 months. For like both of them will be out by the end of January. So.
Yeah, and I know that Colorfield, it's been a long time coming. Presumably, the pandemic really hasn't helped, as I think it's. Yeah. But at this point, hopefully it will be here within a few months in your hands. I mean, I'm sure that's something that you're super excited to have happen.
Yes, very excited. Very excited to finally see that one. It has been so long. Initially, it was supposed to come out in 2020, but things happened. But.
Yeah, I saw that some Boards Game Geek people quite a while back asking about it. But it's been an absolute delight, and to anyone lurking or anyone watching after the fact, or indeed to the few folk who commented, respectfully, thank you very much. And thank you most importantly to Mondo. It has been a lovely chat, and it's been lovely making this connection. So the only thing left to say, do you have any final words?
No, that's it. Thanks for having me on. This was a fun chat. I appreciate it.
Well, for now, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye.
Bye.